Hi, this is the MyCom Church Marketing and Communications Podcast. We're building your digital ministry toolkit and helping to bring your congregation into the digital age. My name is Ryan Dunn. I'm a fellow traveler on the journey to better church connections. And in this episode of MyCom, we meet Olivia DiAgostino, executive for United Women in Faith Digital. And together we explore how that organization is building a thriving digital community for women of faith. Olivia shares insider stories about launching their online platform, the challenges of creating meaningful connections in a virtual space, and the intentional human-centered design principles that guide their work. So whether you're leading a ministry or just curious about digital community building, this conversation, well, it's filled with some practical insights and real-world inspiration that you don't want to miss. This episode is sponsored by Spark House, a publisher of innovative curricula for children, youth, and adults. Check out their Bibles, books, and other resources at wearesparkhouse.org, where you'll find better curriculum by design. All right, let's roll into this interview: digital community building, human-based design, and more with Olivia DiAgostino. Olivia, first of all, thanks for joining us on the MyCom podcast. I'd like to start with this question. Can you describe for us your role with United Women in Faith?
Ryan, thank you so much for having me.
Bet.
I'm really excited to be here and to talk about one of my favorite things, which is the work that United Women in Faith is doing in our digital community. So I am lucky to be the executive for our digital platform, United Women in Faith Digital. You can find us online at uwfaith.org/digital. And that's a vibrant network that we've developed with about 8,400 members, and we're growing every day. And it's just really wonderful to get to do that work of digital community and to engage with so many of our most dedicated United Women in Faith members around the connection every single day.
So what does your role within that look like? Is there a typical day for you? Can you walk us through that?
I'm sure everyone says this, but you know that in the world of ministry, no matter where you are, there's really no such thing as a typical day.
Truth.
Yes. Amen. Amen. But some of the things that I do on a regular basis include working on community engagement. I have a great team of folks, both staff and consultants, who help with that. We publish resources on our platform. We're using the Mighty Network software to kind of undergird us, so we don't have to do any of that, software coding piece ourselves. We get to focus on the community, which is great. So uploading resources, making sure that everything is accessible to our members and offering them support. And of course, the most fun part, just engaging with the folks who are there.
You were part of the whole process of assembling this digital platform, correct? For United Women in Faith?
Yep.
Was there a felt need that the organization was responding to?
There was. I'm really glad you asked that because it gives me a chance to talk a little bit about human-centered design, which is one of our principles.
Oh, wow. We're going deep. All right.
We're getting into it. But yeah, I think it's key actually when you're doing something like this to always start with what it is the community needs, right? We can come up with amazing things, amazing ideas that might work in a different time and place. But if we're not listening to what our people are asking for, we're not going to be successful or to serve them as well as we might. So in this case, we started this process with our director of communications and others, I think in 2021. So it's been a few years. And the felt need that folks were saying was, can we offer some of our most used resources in an online format, given that with the pandemic and the risk factors of many of our members, they were not able to gather in person in large groups in the way that we'd been accustomed to doing, in the way that kind of is the lifeblood of our organization, right? Is being part of that community of women that's able to meet and work together. So the original task was to find a place or a way for us to be able to offer a few of our programs, our curriculum, our monthly programs on a digital space. So that was what we started out with, was trying to meet that need, and it's kind of grown from there.
How's it different now?
I would say it's much more community driven. Because we started with sort of the content, right? We wanted a way to get people the content that was beyond them purchasing a physical book or just a PDF. And we moved into the community side of things. And that's the part that's really taken off and grown. Obviously, we still have content. We're still expanding what we offer and what people can access. But the things that drive people are getting to join the soul care group, getting to connect with someone from their conference or their jurisdiction, or who had a similar experience at a Mission U, making those connections.
You know, a lot of people start a project like, say, reading the Bible, and they get through the first few chapters or books, and then, you know, shipwreck on the shores of Leviticus, right? And for a lot of ministries, I've been there too. Yeah, we know it. For a lot of ministries, that shipwreck point can be that shifting from being a content driven to being a community driven. So do you have any tips to offer? Like, how did you get people to actually buy into the community mindset where, you know, they're participating on their own and not just waiting for the next piece of content to come up?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think starting small, like I said earlier, is one key. Another huge piece, I think, in any, you know, kind of digital space is consistency. People want to know what they can expect and how they can expect to engage.
And what's something that you lean into consistently to get people engaging?
Yeah, I think a great example of this is our most popular group is soul care. So, you know, this is something that we know has been a need for many people, especially women, to kind of take time and space to care for ourselves in order that we might better care for others. I think the womanists and other theologians taught us that. So we have this soul care group, and there's one person, and her, you know, of course, very part-time, she does other things, but her focus is to engage the community there. So that involves, you know, one day a week, we have prayer requests, and folks can all pray for one another. And then you see them return week after week to say, how is your granddaughter doing? How is this, you know, to check back on what it is that they requested prayer or celebration for. She goes live once a week, and folks look forward to that. And they have, you know, they know that every Thursday evening they can expect to see John Jay's face and to connect with her. They have affirmations, you know, things like that. So there's a regular sort of rhythm. And that rhythm is part of the digital life, but we can also think of that as part of the Christian life, right? Like how many of our weeks revolve around sort of Wednesdays and Sundays? And how many of our years revolve around, you know, these seasons that come in predictable orders and offer us time and space to be in community in different ways.
You mentioned that you have moderators, and you're the staff person charged with overseeing this, and challenge for many churches or ministries is that they kind of leave the leadership at that. So how did you start identifying other moderators or coordinators who would participate in the digital community?
I think we looked to our member leaders. It's the first place we go because they're the ones who know us best, right? And in some cases that meant bringing them into a consultant role. In a couple of cases, but in other cases, you know, we just had feedback sessions. We asked folks to fill out a survey because, again, we have to go drill down and figure it out what it is that people are asking for or needing, or how we can best serve them. We don't want to be making big assumptions. So I think looking toward the people who are most active and consulting with them and getting their advice and guidance on what would make this even better and how we can grow. And we've grown very slowly and intentionally, I think. You know, sometimes you see digital spaces like, you know, TikTok, you could easily balloon, right, to millions of followers. And that was never a goal. Our goal is to keep serving the community we have, and to grow as we're doing that.
Hey, this is Ryan, and I need to tell you about the Progressive Planter. What if you could create a church or a place where everyone feels welcomed, valued, and inspired to make a difference? Introducing the Progressive Planter by Joe Graves. Designed for new church start pastors, sending churches, and denominational leaders, it equips you with everything you need to launch and grow an inclusive, social justice-centered community. From crafting a vision to reclaiming evangelism, you'll gain access to practical tools and step-by-step guidance that combines intellectual depth with actionable strategies, all created to help you gain confidence as you build something impactful. It's about more than starting a church. It's about creating a space where everyone belongs, thrives, and grows. Visit Cokesbury.com and order your copy of The Progressive Planter and begin the journey to equip yourself, inspire others, and make a meaningful impact. And now, back to our conversation with Olivia DiAgostino. So it sounds like leadership grew organically. When you click open the whole platform of UW Faith Digital, there are a number of different groups that you can kind of peruse and become a part of. Was it an organic process in identifying what those groups would be as well?
Yeah, I would describe it as organic, but also very intentional. Again, we're not trying to solve every problem immediately, right? We're going one thing at a time. So like I mentioned, we started with just a couple of resources that people could buy, and they could also engage with the community if they wanted to. And of course, as with any digital platforms, you have some folks who are just there to get the thing that they want, the information they need, and then they peace out, or they never check back. But you also have folks who stay or who are engaged by something or say, what else can I read, or who else can I find? And those are the folks that we really want to lean into. So we've grown pretty gradually. We've done a lot of testing. We have, like, for example, one conference has a group now. So we're seeing how it goes with that. And then hopefully we can offer more, if people want geographically based groups to connect with people in their area. We're hoping to be able to do more of that.
Yeah. Has there been an instance where what has begun in the digital has transferred over to the in-person?
That is a really interesting question. The thing that comes to mind first is it's actually the same conference. So shout out to Indiana, not related, but both women from the Indiana conference. So one thing that we have tried to offer, as we go digital, is we're trying to offer bonus content, right? So why should I purchase the digital version and get, access to this great community rather than purchasing the book, or can I purchase both of them together, right? So we've tried to develop additional content to go along with that. We have, videos. There's so much more you can do, right? If you're thinking in a new modality. So as part of that, we've had community gatherings, which is sort of a monthly recurring gathering where we, the staff and the author of the resource, go through the program that's coming up, right? So that women can experience it if they're going to be leading it. Sometimes it's nice to just experience it. That can be fulfilling, but also so that folks have an idea what's coming up and how they might want to do it, especially if their unit is going to be meeting online. And that's the place that we've seen some sort of overlap into the real world, is we've had a few instances where folks really want to gather in person, so they'll bring the laptop, they'll set up, and they'll call into the community gathering with sisters from all over the United States. But they're all there, in one person's living room or their church or whatever. So they're kind of, this is self-starting, not something that we've suggested. But it's great to see that they want that fellowship in two ways, right? They want to be physically with one another and have that conversation, but they also want to be part of this broader connection, which is something that's, really beautiful about Methodism, I think. Little Wesleyan moment is we have these local bands, but we also are part of this much bigger connection and community that we're able to lean on.
Yeah, well, and just indicative of how we relate to one another in this digital age that we're in too, right? I mean, there are digital aspects and sort of incarnated or in-person aspects of the way that we relate with one another. You had called it human-centered design. In the marketing world, they use terms like user experience, and it sounds like the success of getting people engaged in the digital form of United Women in Faith has been just having in mind like this user experience. And I'm wondering if there's a component where as new people are joining, is there kind of a ritual to welcoming people in, or is there a defined process? Because in our churches, we all know about this. When a newcomer shows up on a Sunday morning, generally there's some kind of like follow-up procedure. Do you see the same thing happening within the digital space?
Yeah, actually. So I'll talk about some things that we have, and then some hopes that we have.
Sure.
So we have, as sort of the entering process, we have a welcome checklist, which is not maybe the churchiest name, right? But that's the name the platform uses. So it shows you a few different places you can go to find what you need, which I think is always helpful in person or online, right? Like you want to know where the bathroom is or where to take your kids if you need to step out, right? Like those are the things that are acts of hospitality, both in physical, in embodied and in less embodied spaces. Yeah. So we have that. And one thing we ask folks to do is answer a couple of just sort of basic prompt questions like, you know, what church or unit are you a part of, and what's something you love about your community? And that brings out some really beautiful answers because people, you know, diversity of people brings a diversity of answers. And the cool thing about that is we've been doing it for quite a while. So now you can go back and look at hundreds of responses of people sort of affirming what it is that they love about that particular place in that time. So that's pretty cool to be able to have that archive. Yeah. But I also am glad you asked that because I've been thinking intentionally about this lately because we've sort of broadened into having all access members, which is people can join at the national level if they're not part of a church or, you know, maybe they're geographically transient or they don't have a UMC near them with it, whatever it is. Right? Folks are able to join in that sort of national, like low friction method. And we are actually transitioning to having United Women in Faith Digital be their landing space. So I am putting some real thought into how we welcome people in particular people who are maybe less engaged or less familiar with the history of the organization than our current members are. Like if you're coming in the door for the first time, what is it that you really need to know? So if you have any wisdom or insight in how you sort of set up those rituals, I would love to hear that.
There are community developers who talk about the importance of ritual and almost like in an initiation rites in terms of building that community. So Casper ter Kuile is one of those people who would talk about ritual having value in making people feel a sense of community. Charles Vogel is another person who has done a lot of work in identifying what draws people into community, and he also talks about the value of having just an initiation rite, so a sense of like a public recognition that you are here and belonging within this. So, when you were initially launching this platform, was there a pushback against people fearing that they were going to have to learn something new? Sometimes when it comes to digital community engagement, people are fearful that it's like, well, I'm already doing Facebook, I'm already doing another social media platform, and I'm going to ask my people to learn this new platform. Was that a conversation that you all had to navigate?
I think there's always some level of discomfort to change. I think that's just human. But also, let me just say, do you know United Women in Faith? Like, our members consistently blow me away with what they are willing to try and do and go along with, and the action, social action that they're willing to take. So in some ways, yes, we thought about it. And in other ways, I am just consistently so impressed with the members of United Women in Faith, who are so much more. I think sometimes we get reduced to or people just don't know, right? They think those are the ladies who do the bake sales.
Right. Yeah.
And yes, but they are also the women who are trying new platforms to connect with one another, who are determined to engage this social action in the light of quarantine, right? So like, yes, and I think another thing that you mentioned is sort of the fatigue of having a lot of different tech, and that too is very real. But one thing that I think can be really refreshing about something like this is that there's so much less noise than, for example, Facebook. And then in the last year, we've seen many people continue to sort of divest from other platforms, from Facebook, particularly from X, which we as an organization have also sort of stepped away from because of privacy concerns and other concerns along those lines. So I think in some ways it can be really nice and refreshing to have a space where you go and it's just the thing you're interested in, and it's the people that you know you can trust to some level, right? Sort of stepping away from all of that noise and advertising that social media can bring, that actually brings a lot of fatigue and is not allowing you to care for your soul.
Yeah, trust is huge. And in my role as a social media manager, I often have to deal with the hijacking of conversations and then the pushback against the hijacking of conversations. So I'm wondering if that's something that you have to really be mindful of within your space, or because it is a very dedicated space, is that something that is just not like a daily concern?
I feel like I'm doing a lot of yes and, which is such a classic, like, mainline answer, right?
Yeah.
But yes and, right? Like, we, of course, do some because we want to keep this platform I always shy away from safe space, but a brave space, or, a place where people are able to have difficult conversations with respect. But it is so much less antagonistic than more public-facing platforms, right? Like, there are certain things that if we even mention on Facebook or Instagram, it's sort of, get to the trolls. And a lot of times those are not people who are in community with us.
Right.
They are often, people from other traditions or even outside of the Christian tradition who just disagree with concepts like women speaking, and I'm sure that's the case for you too, right? Like, sometimes things just sort of spread and escalate in ways that we didn't predict. And that is
Right.
much less, it happens much less frequently on our internal platform. Like, of course we moderate, but very little really gets, quote unquote, out of hand.
Do you have obvious moderation rules, and do users know what the guidelines are?
Yeah, so part of our welcome checklist is something we use actually at every event or space for United Women in Faith, period, which we call our Sisterhood of Grace. And these are guidelines that govern how we're going to interact with one another. So we have those, front and center. Folks are familiar with them both from here and from other spaces. And I think we can always kind of, look back to those as a way to, recenter the conversation. Some of those include, like, speak from your own experience. I think just doing that, period, is a way to, it allows you to come in from a place of more humility rather from a place of you're wrong. So I think that as a starting point is really helpful. One of them is expect unfinished business, both discomfort and joy, right? We're not going to solve everything. And that's the beauty of having a long tradition of this relationship with one another. That's looked different over the centuries, obviously, but we will have unfinished business. But as others have said, the work is not yours to finish, but you cannot abandon it.
I feel like we're kind of pushing against Facebook here a little bit, but and in fact we are. But there are a lot of churches who will, or ministries who will say, well, we're ready to go into that community engagement space. Our people are on Facebook, so we can draw them into Facebook groups. United Women in Faith, as you were looking to design a digital community space, you've gone to another platform. You're using Mighty Networks. Was there, do you remember there being reasons why you wanted to lean into something like Mighty Networks as opposed to just laying into something like Facebook groups, a space where people were already engaging?
Yeah, I think that did not come up initially because we did start as a place for resources, and Facebook is not a great fit for that, right? Like you can't really post entire resources or you can't monetize them. So that, sort of was off the table immediately as an option for us because it was really the resources and the community that we liked. We weren't looking for just one or just the other. And I think if you are looking for, there are some great Facebook groups out there. There's a lot of good content and creative work on many different platforms. That just was not what fit the problem that we had identified.
Okay. Well, what advice might you be able to offer for ministry leaders who want to build a more engaged digital community, and maybe they're not sure where to start? They're feeling a little fearful at this moment.
Yeah, I think try it out. My three the key things I think are, number one, start small. You can always grow. Cast the vision, but then take the baby steps. I think number two would be identify a problem, which is not necessarily a bad problem. I mean, thinking about design or user experience, what are we going to solve or contribute by having this thing be in existence? So I think if you can identify what it is that your people are asking for or craving, that will lead you on the right path. What solutions is it that your people need? So that would be number two. And then I think number three is another principle of human-centered design or user experience, et cetera, is don't be afraid to iterate. What you come up with now, I mean, do you ever look back on your work and think, oh, what was I doing? From a couple of years ago, right?
Every 6 months, yeah.
Right. So I think, start where you are, build, and don't be afraid to go back and think, this isn't doing it. What do we need to add, or what do we need to change? Or what can we do with the resources that we have to make this happen? I think that's something that's really beautiful about digital spaces is you have, at least it feels that way to me, you have a lot of room to experiment and to try different things. And you can see what works along the way.
Well, thanks for offering so much. I feel like we can mention that anybody can go check out uwfaith.org/digital. Maybe we just want to be mindful of the fact that, this is a cultivated community for meeting specific people. So, I was able to go around and kind of check things out, and there as a lurker. and is that okay if folks want to go in and kind of cruise through like that?
Yeah, I always like to frame our audience as members and friends. So we do, obviously, we check out everyone who creates a profile. So if you want to create a profile and just note what it is that you're looking for, that's always helpful, but you don't have to. But that's also nice as you're looking through to see who you want to connect with. But our main audience is, of course, the women of United Women in Faith. And this is a space for our community and our resources. But we welcome anyone who's a friend or an ally of the work that we do.
Awesome. Well, thanks for giving this time to us and for cultivating the space and, for lending into the prophetic voice that United Women in Faith really has represented for our entire connection. So real pleasure talking to you and sharing in the journey.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks for taking this journey with us on the MyCom podcast. Again, this episode is brought to us by Spark House. Spark House offers curriculum including Frolic, Spark, Activate Faith, Whirl, Holy Moly, Reform, and Echo the Story. Spark House is your trusted source for faith formation resources that connect with kids, youth, and leaders. And you can access all their curriculum plus hundreds of bonus resources on their online platform called Spark House Digital. They add new content quarterly, including children's messages, intergenerational events, and Christmas programs. Subscribe today to make Spark House Digital your go-to source for children and youth ministry resources that are fresh, fun, and relevant. To learn more, go to wearesparkhouse.org. Better church curriculum by design. For more things MyCom and more tips and resources for your ministry, check out resourceumc.org. MyCom is a production of United Methodist Communications, and it comes out monthly. I want to give thanks to Renee McNeil and Patty Delabovi for production and marketing support. Again, my name is Ryan Dunn. Until next time, peace.